So I think it's probably time we get started. So hello to all of you who've come and joined us so far. I'm going to give you a little bit of an intro as to what's coming up and what's happening. Let me just double check that we are currently recording. I think we are. Excellent. So I'm going to give you a little bit of an intro as to what's coming up in the next hour for you, and then we'll get started. So this is the Digital Transformation webinar. I'm Chloe Thomas. I'm a best-selling author and host of the award-winning e-commerce Masterplan podcast. So if my voice, if you're going, where's that? Where do I know that voice from? That's probably where. And a huge thank you from me to the teams at Clayvu and at Vimo for putting on this event, because digital transformation is something that we're all grappling with in one way or another, but it's usually something that happens behind closed doors. You don't usually hear the story of how someone went through the process. So it's brilliant that we're going to be opening up the doors to that today, and that they've persuaded Simon to come on and tell us all about how they've done digital transformation and the journey they've been on at LSE Retail. Now, wherever you are in your digital transformation journey, you're going to learn something today that's going to help you to smooth out that journey. It might help you speed it up. It might help you change it completely, or it might help you save a lot and get much greater results, because that's what we're here to help you do. In a moment, I'm going to bring Simon on and introduce him. But before that, I need to quickly explain what's coming up in about the next 40 minutes and how you out there can get involved. So we're going to have a couple of polls, one coming up very soon for you all. We're also going to be chatting with Simon about their digital transformation journey, and we're going to be talking about why LSE Retail decided to do it, the internal and the external drivers to that. We're going to be talking about how they worked out that Magento 2 was the right option for them, what moving to Magento 2 was like, the building and launching process for the 3 new e-commerce websites they put live in just 1 year, how things are now the bulk of the transformation work is done. We're going to be covering an awful lot of ground, so I suspect you're going to have lots of questions or little areas you'd like us to jump into in a bit more detail, and there's the opportunity for you to get those questions answered. So I know Stephen Hill in Brighton, you have already found the Q&A box because you've already sent me one in. Well, you've told me where you are, that is. So you will all find a Q&A button somewhere on your Zoom screen. Throughout, I mean, you can start putting questions in there now if you want, but you're probably going to need to hear a little bit of what Simon's got to say before you do. But please start putting questions in there, and we will do our best to answer those all when we get to the Q&A section later. And to help us answer those questions later on, I will be joined, or Simon and I will be joined by Georgia Barry from Vimo and James Andow from Clayvu. So lots of us here to answer your questions in about half an hour or so. Do add those questions as we go through. You know, when it sparks in your brain that you've got an idea of something you want to ask, please do drop it in the box, and we will work through all of those later. We're going to wrap up sometime between 2:45 and 3. And for those of you who are working in more different scenarios to normal, with those greater distractions, whatever they may be, we will be sending out a full replay of this webinar for you to watch again and again and again. And that will be hitting your inboxes, possibly today, more likely tomorrow, but certainly by end of play tomorrow you will have it. So if you have a distraction that happens whilst we're going through this, or you know we've given you so much you might have managed to quite take it all in, or you want to get one of your team members to watch it tomorrow, you will have the ability to do that. Okay, I said there was a couple of polls coming up. We're going to do the first poll right now. So on your screens should now have been taken over pretty much completely by this poll. So what we want you to do is to answer the question, have you got a clear roadmap for your e-commerce site? Yes, you know what developments you're planning for the next 3 to 6 months. Yes, you know what you're planning for the next 12 months. No, not at all, or you're not really sure what an e-commerce roadmap is. Okay, we've got a few of you voted. Oh, the results are coming in thick and fast right now. I'll just give you a couple more seconds to answer that, because not quite all of you have. Okay, countdown to get your answers in. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay. Oh, flurry as I get to the number 1 there. Okay. That's the poll completed. So results we have are, hold on, sorry, just lost the screen there. Apologies, everybody. Results you've got right now are, the number 1 answer was yes, 12 months forward. So congrats to all of you out there who are that well planned around what's happening with your e-commerce. I have to say, I haven't got my plan in place for the next 12 months. So hats off to you. That was about 46% of you though. So whilst that's the most popular answer, it certainly doesn't represent the majority of the audience. A lot of you planning 3 to 6 months forward. And we've got some of you being brave enough to admit you have no plan, no roadmap in place at all. Thank you very much for giving us those results. Those are going to help Simon and I to make sure we make the interview section as useful as possible for you. And we will have another poll for you coming up later. For now, though, I think it's time to get Simon joining us. So Simon, could you please turn on your video and your audio? I'm going to stop sharing the screen, which should mean that all of you out there can now see me. And in the very near future, we'll also be able to see Simon. So let's just get Simon up here. Hello, Simon. How are you doing?
Okay, yourself?
Yes, not bad. I've just. Good. Are you able to turn on your video for me?
Yeah, good. Let me try it. It won't let me start it.
Amy, we've got some challenges with getting Simon's video on. And I don't seem to be able to.
Hi everyone. Yeah, sure. Let me just take a look. 1 sec.
Thank you. Bear with us a second, guys, because
it's at the bottom left-hand side, Simon. So where you can mute and unmute yourself, there ought to be also like a start video button. At the moment, it should have a red line going through it, but
yeah, it says I can't start it because the host has stopped it.
Okay. 1 sec.
Sorry about this, guys. We will be there in a second. Trust me, I've seen Simon on webcam and it's well worth waiting for. So just bear with us and we will have all this in place for you in a moment or two. Whilst we're waiting for that to come up, has anyone got, anyone who's got their roadmap sorted for the next 12 months? Because I know there's 6 of you out there who have. What's the first thing on that roadmap, or what's the thing on that roadmap you're most excited about? If you could put that in the chat or the Q&A for me, that would be, and I'll let everyone know what those top topics are. I can hear Amy frantically pressing buttons to try and get you on here for video, Simon. Oh, no one with the 12-month plan willing to share. How shocking. Right, I think what we shall do, Simon, is I think we'll start our chat and hopefully at some point you'll... Oh, there you are.
Okay, yeah.
Hello. How are you?
Everybody, how are we doing?
We're doing okay. How are you doing today?
Yeah, okay, yeah. The sun is shining here in Manchester as well.
Yeah, because you're the furthest away from me person we've identified so far. Who's in the UK, that is. Obviously not as far away as South Africa.
Yeah, not South Africa. I wish I was there.
Well, now you're here, I should probably tell everyone a little bit more about you. Yeah. So for all of you out there being very patient with us whilst we got the video working, Simon Horton has been in the UK e-commerce industry since 2003. That's nearly 20 years experience of driving converting traffic to websites. He's worked for some top, and I mean it, top online retailers, including ShopDirect and the M Brown Group. And today he's joining us to share the digital transformation journey he's been on as marketing director at the LSE Retail Group. So Simon, most of our viewers probably don't know what the LSE Retail Group is, but they've probably shopped on some of your websites. You just want to give us a bit of a quick understanding of who LSE Retail Group are and what you're up to.
Yeah, sure. We're probably more well known, or were more well known in marketplaces. So we've got a really successful product brand called Minisun. And that is the product brand that sits on all of our lighting products. We're a massively growing online retailer, and we've spent the last 4 years, whilst I've been with the group, growing our own B2C and B2B brands. So they are iconic lights, value lights, and mini sun trade, and all positioned very differently in the market. So we source lighting products directly from our offices based in China. We've got a massive, huge range of inspirational lighting, great value, and excellent service. And over the last 4 years, it's been a sort of a really exciting time. When I joined the business, we were investing heavily in what was at the time Magento 1. I joined about 6 months into a significant IT project where we were rebuilding our ERP and operations stack, which then, once that was delivered, led nicely onto the board sort of scratching its head. Well, what can we give IT next to think about? And at the time, the discussions in the Magento community that were around when the support for Magento 1 would cease, which differed depending on which blogs you read. So
So it must be a very cool time to become involved with LSE, because you know there's this big ERP progress in a upgrade process in happening, which is brilliant from a marketer's perspective. It's like, right, they're already sorting out the back end. I'm going to have a platform on which I can make some real difference. So it must have been brilliant to be able to move into that Magento 2 switch with the ERP and that solid foundation on which to work from.
Yeah, it was, and we spent the first 12 to 18 months building our capabilities on Magento 1, and I think the final iteration of that was 1.9.3 or something like that. So we'd sort of built our capacity and capabilities on M1, and it had just got to the point where it's becoming what I would describe as unstable. We developed quite a lot of unique and bespoke development because the way in which our products are set up and presented to the customer it is quite unique. And it just felt that we were at the point where we'd plateaued and weren't getting a decent return on the investment that we were making on that bespoke development.
Yeah, it's one thing not getting the return on investment, but it's quite another when you're also thinking it could fall over at any moment, and you can see those risks in there. It really forces one to make the next step, doesn't it?
Yeah, particularly for lighting. So I, as you rightly said, my background was mainly fashion, so that's very seasonal. I hadn't kind of realised lighting's very seasonal. So as soon as you don't have this beautiful sunshine and light outside, and it starts going dark and the clock's going back, boom, people start buying lights. And we had a few anxious moments in and around our peak where, our sites they weren't falling over, but it definitely felt like they could have. So, yeah.
So there was a lot of internal pressure to take this transformation journey. Was there opportunities externally which were suggesting it was a good time to take the next step?
Yeah, I mean, particularly because of the support around M1. The buzzword in the market was around Magento 2, and it just made perfect sense for myself and my team and the IT director to kind of come together and really begin to scope out what it was that we wanted. So, what was desirable. And ultimately, we started to lean on an external consultant for a little bit of sort of unbiased opinion, really.
Yeah, it can be very hard to work out what you want internally. It can just turn into a huge shopping list rather than any kind of, something you can actually take to a web builder and go, can you do this? So how did you manage to really get focused on the key things you wanted to achieve with the project?
He introduced a rating system to us called the Moscow rating tool, and by piecing together all of the sort of key components in an e-commerce project around, things like UX, UI, product makeup, what was desirable from a sort of the payment gateway perspective. What did we want to present from a delivery point of view? So things like, do we want to do click and collect? Did we want to open the floodgates to as many carriers as possible? We sort of threw everything into the melting pot really, and used that Moscow rating approach to kind of distill everything and prioritize what it was exactly that we wanted.
And that Moscow rating, that sounds like quite a complicated tool because it's got the word Moscow in it. But yeah, how does that tool actually function?
Yeah, so Moscow basically stands for must-haves, should-haves, could-haves, and won't-have. And really what that enabled us to do was to really prioritise what it was that was of key importance, and almost kind of segment then those building blocks and those key e-commerce components, and ultimately we arrived at a couple of options really at the time in terms of platforms that were out there, one of which was M2.
And I have to say, having thought the Moscow piece was quite complicated, it's really simple, isn't it? You could use that for almost deciding what your dinner you're going to have tonight.
Yeah. I mean, I've introduced it to my 10-year-old daughter. She isn't using it yet, but it is pretty simple to adopt.
Very cool. And you said you ended up, that was crucial in deciding that Magento was the route you were going to go down.
Yes. Yeah. Once we'd sort of scoped it and distilled what it was that we wanted, and we were clear on that, we then went to tender. So it made sense for us to use our existing agency that we were using at the time, but also to go out to the wider market. And an important sort of factor for us at the time, and Graham and I, Graham's the IT director, we wanted to not kind of keep the scope of the agencies within the Northwest, because we fully appreciated that there are specialist agencies all over the UK. So I know someone on this webinar today is from Brighton. One of the agencies was from that area, which to get to from Manchester was I kid you not, it was about a 7-hour train journey. But making sure that we fully scoped out and understood what was out there, ultimately arrived us at a very clear decision on who we wanted to go forwards with.
And that was Vimo, wasn't it?
It was, yes.
Be clear on that. Yes, I think it can be quite tempting to add geography as a key factor in choosing who you work with. And I think often it can really shut you off from some really great potential partners. So yeah, those of you out there watching, there's a big old takeaway for you. Don't just go geographic when you're trying to find your partner, because you need to find the right one. And what did that process look like of choosing your agency? You said it was the 7-hour journey to Brighton. Did you go and visit everybody on that list?
We did. We went and visited every agency that we put forward into that roster. We sent them all a brief outlining the scope of the project. We also gave them some clear direction on where we were currently, and what our our sort of roadmap looked like, and what our expectations and deliverables of the project were. And then we let each of them present a pitch. And that came in various different formats. Everybody's got their own sort of style and approach when it comes to pictures and presentations. We then kind of digested all of that back at base, followed it up with some more kind of granular probed questions, or probing questions. And then we used a fairly simple score-based card to sort of whittle it down, really, from 5 to 1.
Oh, so literally you graded each proposal on a number of points out of 5.
We did, yeah.
Did you all agree on the point scoring, or was that challenging? Because I ask because when I've done these before,
it was an aggregated scorecard. So everybody that had been part of that discovery piece, ultimately had their own right to score the agencies accordingly. So there was no bias, and I think ultimately we arrived at the right decision that everybody felt we all agreed on.
I think that's another key point, isn't it? An e-commerce build and a re-platforming is such a complex piece. You have IT involved, you've got customer services involved, you've got marketing, you've got buying and merchandising, and you have to get all those voices heard and having a say. Otherwise, you can end up with a site which is actually not fit for purpose because the right people weren't involved and didn't have a say.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And for me and my team, one of the important sort of considerations as well was who were the people, what were they like, how did they approach, the brief. Did we feel we could get on with them? Because there's nothing worse than getting in bed, so to speak, with a partner that you want to work strategically with, that maybe you feel you can't build a long-term relationship with.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? It's not a one-off project. This is, if you want to get the most out of your website, it's an ongoing relationship for as long as that website survives. So you have to find someone who gets your brand, who gets what you're trying to achieve, and who you feel you can work with. Yeah,
I'm someone who ultimately has had experience in working on M2 and significant migration projects.
And obviously being on M2 enables you to add a lot of kind of best of breed software options into the mix as well. So I guess first off, were those best of breed pieces, were they in right from the very beginning of the project, or were they something which you identified as you got to work with Vimo and identified the right solutions?
Some of them were put forward as part of their initial pitch. However, because we hadn't gone into necessarily the granular detail that we needed to. We cycled back to all of those key elements, if you like. Clevu was one of the few plugins that we came across, and that we needed to fully understand what the benefits would be before we signed on the dotted line. And the best of breed was exactly what one of our objectives was. So there are other plugins that we've utilised that are best in breed as well, because it was such a significant investment for the business that we needed to make sure that we almost leapfrogged ahead of not only where we were on M1, but in terms of making sure we were competitive.
Yeah, and it's kind of that future proofing as well when you go best of breed.
Yeah.
You know you're with someone who's constantly investing in the improvement. And I guess when it comes to a solution like Clavo, which uses artificial intelligence and machine learning to get your results right, the longer it sits on your website, the better a job it does for you. So the sooner you commit, the greater the returns in the future.
Yeah, yeah, and we'd all, you know, when we were scoping out Clever, we'd all had sort of individual experience on that plugin, whether we knew about it, using it at the time through other brands that we were all very fond of. So we knew the power of, you know, of artificial intelligence and the predictive element of the search tool itself, and you know, we've still got some way to go. It's such a powerful plugin, you know, that a lot of data comes out of it, and I'll admit we you know, we make good use of it, but there's always more learnings and stuff that you can take from such a data rich plugin.
And I guess getting the search functionality right on a site that's selling lights must be more important than the average website, simply because the customer don't necessarily know what they're searching for. I don't think many of us can look at a light bulb and go, oh, that's 60 watt or whatever that is nowadays in lumens. You know, so we don't necessarily know the lingo. So a tool that can work out what the customer means is crucial. Yeah,
yeah, and the insight that we get from Clever also helps inform us in terms of what might be becoming a trend. So not only does it help from a marketing perspective, but it also helps us from a content and a product development point of view as well.
And I guess that's another piece of where getting the whole team involved in the tech decisions can make so much more impact to the business. It's not just a case of putting it live and letting it run, and it's a case of making sure that it's data that the buying and merchandising teams are going to find useful.
Absolutely, yeah, yeah.
And as we're getting towards the end of our little chat, so having gone through this amazing process and managed to put 3 websites live, made huge steps forward, and we'll talk a bit about the results later on, but made huge steps forward in each of those brand identities and how they're working. Are there, for those of our, I mean, what did we say in the poll? We had people who are looking 3 to 6 months and less forward in their terms of their e-commerce development roadmap. So there's a lot of change coming up, I think, for our audience. Have you got any tips for them on helping make that digital transformation ever more successful?
Yeah, I mean, I think in terms of what does good look like, or what would be deemed as successful, I think it's really good to get the senior stakeholders on board as early as possible if you're going to be going to the finance director or whoever it might be that holds the purse strings, and sort of getting their buy-in, but putting a robust, bulletproof business case together, but not sort of that looks at the short term, that does look further ahead than 6 to even 12 months, because there's always more to be done. You know, we're in a very competitive space, whichever vertical market you're in. So whether you are selling lighting or whether you're selling fashion, users, end user expectations are becoming ever more increasing. You know, long gone are the days where people are patient. So, you know, that's a real consideration for me. You know, if you're building out your roadmap, never forget the simple KPIs such as, you know, conversion, bounce, AOV, you know, and then other things like UX and UI. So yeah.
Yeah, it can get very easy to get excited by the possibilities of a new platform, and you know, just start chucking extensions in all over the place and just going for all the tech you can possibly find, and actually forget about the fact that what you're trying to do is make the customer experience better, so they buy more often and spend more when they buy. It really does drill down to those simple elements, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Simon, that's been absolutely fantastic.
No
Chatting
problem,
about
thank you.
that. We are going to, we've got some questions coming in. Oh, actually, I think, Amanda, I'm going to let you get a head start on the Q&A. So I'm going to ask, Simon, I'm going to ask you Amanda's question now. So, but the rest of you do keep adding those Q&As, and then in a moment we'll go to the full-on Q&A. So Simon, the question from Amanda is, what other favourite third-party tech partners are you using at the moment? Who else made it onto the site so far?
We're using a company called Yotpo. So Yotpo provide us with product reviews. They're a social proofing plugin. We really like the idea of not only kind of upweighting the usability of a third-party plugin for customer reviews, but also the fact that we could integrate it with social media platforms such as Instagram. So user-generated content, we know drives engagement, and ultimately, what's better than somebody else selling your product, but a customer that's sort of shared an image, having you know, installed or positioned the floor lamp, whatever the product might be, in their own setting, and then they're then adding inspirational content to your site.
Cool.
Yeah.
Excellent, a great recommendation there. So what I'm going to do is, Simon, I'm going to mute you for a moment so you can have a little short breather.
Sure.
I'll leave your video on though, so we don't have those challenges again.
Okay.
So muting you now, Simon. Everyone who's out there, we are about to go into the Q&A section. So what I need to tell you about is, one, I need you to send me in your questions. So what would you like to ask Simon about what has happened at the LSE Retail Group during their digital transformation? We talked about how to choose your agency, about how to involve your team members in that decision-making process. We talked about that Moscow rating tool that he used. Is there some detail you want around that? We also discussed how he went about choosing those best-of-breed search pieces, and quite a lot more. So do put your questions in now. You should be able to find the question and answer box somewhere down the bottom of your screen, most likely, although it does tend to move around a bit on Zoom depending on what computer you're using, what device you're using. We're also going to be having, coming up in a moment, we're going to have Georgia and James joining us for the Q&A. So if you've got specific questions for Vimo or for Klavu, they will be here to answer those as well. And before we get into all of that, I have another poll for you. So I warn you, this one, here we go, we are now launched. You've got a two-parter, so you need to do a bit of scrolling on your screen. We've got the first question is, are you using an on-site search solution currently? And you've got lots of choices there. So this, you can click Klavu, Bloomreach, Other, Findly, SearchSpring, Agolia. You might be using the solution that comes with your website. And you can hit no on that one as well. So if you're not currently using a search solution. And then we've also got the second question, which is, are you considering on-site search for the future? So is this something which is on your list of things to do, on your list, on your e-commerce roadmap, I suppose? So for that, we've got in the next 0 to 3 months, the next 3 to 6 months, the next 12 months. We've got no, you don't need it for your business. And we've also got that you're happy with what you're using, which we've got answers coming in. We've got about a third of you answering so far. So these are anonymous, so don't worry, no one's going to check up on you afterwards. But please do get those votes in. And we've got some lovely questions coming in too. So we will deal with those very, very soon. Great to see those coming in. Let's do a countdown, because last time I did a countdown on the poll, it caused a flurry of votes. So we'll go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And yep, there's a load more votes coming in at the end. So thank you very much for that, guys. We will, I guess actually the first thing, I'll quickly give you the poll results, and then we will get all our panelists up for the Q&A. So The first question of the poll was, are you using an on-site search solution currently? We had 18% of attendants saying no, 73% saying Klaviyo. So I guess we're preaching to the converted a little bit here. That's very cool. And we had 9% saying other. Are you considering on-site search for the future? We've got 18% saying yes in the next 3 to 6 months. We've got another 9% saying yes within the next 12 months. 9% on no, I don't see the need, and we've got 64% saying I'm happy with what I'm using. So, some great to see so many of you looking as far as getting your search sorted out on your website. Now the questions are coming in thick and fast. Please do ask your questions too. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to ask James and Georgia to join us, and we'll get Simon back on as well as soon as I find the correct console to be able to do that. So let's go. Simon unmuted, James you're unmuted, Georgia you're unmuted, and I can see you as well. Oh, and I can see James. Oh hold on, Georgia, I have failed to unmute you. Oh, I think it's muted. It's muted at your end, Georgia. I was going clicking and clicking, and nothing's happening. Guys, thank you very much for joining us. I hope you've enjoyed the chat with Simon thus far. I did say earlier that we were going to get into a little bit of the results. So if I go on to the next slide here that everyone can see, let's talk about kind of the overall results first. So Georgia, Simon, how has this big project impacted and improved things at LSE?
Yeah, I can jump in there. So having a look at the analytics performance and sort of a couple of months post go live, because I think we've been live since about December, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, we've managed to find some really, really nice growth metrics in there, and included in that is some really, really nice growth in conversion, and that's sitting at 10%, which is just phenomenal, I think, and a 60% increase in revenue overall, which I think is even more. I mean, that's ultimately the number that everybody's looking at, and exactly like you said, in order to make continuous investments, you need to know that the site is performing, that the platform is stable. And yeah, hopefully those awesome growths can kind of help to feed into future plans and help you optimize and grow on that even further as we look to the roadmap for the next sort of year or two or even 5 years.
And Simon, you mentioned during our Q&A about the importance of getting the finance director on board. With results like that, it must make your job as marketing director a little bit easier when you're going to him with new projects.
Not every project's the same.
A typical finance director then. James, do you want to talk to us a little bit about the results from the Klaviyo side of things so far?
Yeah, sure. So obviously, I mean, they kind of speak for themselves, and obviously, really great to see such a lift, and it's fairly typical what we see when we have a merchant add Klaviyo to their site. So obviously the search conversion up 23%. Search plays such a major part in site navigation, and a lot of customers will just go straight to the search bar in order to find products, and that can channel straight into a conversion from search. So I'm really pleased to see that lifted. And likewise with the other ones, really. As I say, they kind of speak for themselves, but generally quite typical of what we'd see when we add Klaviyo to a site.
Excellent. Simon, anything you'd like to add into those results before I take that slide down?
No, I mean, the only thing I would go back to is the point I made earlier, which is that's some of those amazing stats are just the tip of the iceberg, and really it's about continuous optimization for me. That's probably the phase that we're now in.
Excellent. Okay, well let me see if I can find I'll stop sharing that. So then, I have those of you who are watching wonder why I just went, in front of me I've got another machine with what you guys can see, and all of a sudden it was like all the faces are there, so you can see us all now, so that's exciting for you. Okay, so to hit some of your questions, and we've still got time to probably ask some more than what I've got in right now, so if you have a question you're burning to ask the panelists, then please do add it to the Q&A now. In the near future, we'll have to stop taking them, but I can still fit in 1 or 2 more. So you just said, Simon, about the need to be continuously optimizing. We've got a great question here, which is, what metrics do you look at every morning to keep you continuously optimizing?
What metrics do I look at every morning? Quite a few metrics. I mean, what we've developed over probably the last 6 months is one in particular person in my team has developed an automated report that comes out every morning, generated from Data Studio. I mean, sort of at a headline level, what I'm particularly interested in are we managing our costs efficiently and effectively? What site metrics are we seeing? So when I'm talking about costs, I'm talking about cost of acquisition. Are they in line with what we would expect? Are we on track to deliver our sales budget for that week? And then other things that fall underneath that. So how is each channel performing? So, you know, PPC, paid social, all those other kind of feeder channels, if you like. And then at an overarching level, conversion and bounce and AOV. Both vary day to day. So I tend not to look at something just in a 24-hour period, but you know, a longer period of time.
Nice. And for those of you, anyone out there who isn't yet using Google Data Studio, it's a free tool, kind of sits quite nice alongside Google Analytics. I pre-warn you, the first time you log in, you're going to lose a day. You will, if you're anything like me, you'll log in for the first time and then all of a sudden it'll be tea time and you'll be like, where did the day go? But I've created such cool reports. I love that George is nodding away down there as I'm saying that. Okay, sticking on kind of like the stats side of things, another one for you, Simon. Do you measure investments in technology against revenue? And if so, any best practices on doing so? Tough question.
Yeah, I mean, the way in which we're beginning to evolve our sort of development roadmap, so our continuous development, is by scoping out what it is that we require, how much that is going to cost to deliver, and therefore what we would expect to get by way of return on that investment. So we look quite a lot at different metrics that we think that development is going to improve, and we can quite quickly calculate, well, if it's going to cost X, Y, Z, what would we expect to get by way of improvement in web metrics, and therefore how long would it take to pay for itself? So there's nothing complicated apart from probably the data that you've got in front of you. When we first of all scoped moving from M1 to M2, you know, we were told how much conversion would go up by just purely based on improvements in overall site performance. So you've got some metrics just at your fingertips there that quite quickly you could, you know, create, well, if it's going to cost me so much, what do I want to see in the first 6 or 12 months?
There you go. Hopefully that's helped you work that one out, but it's a one it's worth working out, but it's quite hard to do. I guess Georgia, James, did either of you have any? You must get asked that similar questions quite a lot. Do you have any tips around that area? Or are you both internally going, please don't ask me that question, Chloe?
No, it's a very fair question, and often you do need to kind of prove the business case to, you know, your finance director to actually get the investment. So I think very much what Simon says, oftentimes if you're looking at a particular tool or technology that you want to invest in, you should be able to get some kind of out of the box metrics. What is difficult is applying that to your business and then understanding exactly how your product and your customer would actually respond to that and how it might perform. But absolutely, those numbers are generally available for you to make that assessment. And I think Simon hit the nail on the head, is just looking at what could I expect to feasibly recoup from this in the first 6 months, and then looking at that on an annual basis as well. And you could quite simply potentially get a baseline of that, and then a best case scenario, and kind of look back after 6 months and gauge, you know, did we actually hit those numbers or not, and then reassess the investment if you need to. I think the key thing there is just making sure that you enter into contracts that are feasible for your business, and the turnaround times, and the sort of revenue you're expecting to make, and just making sure you can move or switch if you do need to, if you find it's not working.
Yeah, and we've had another question in, which I think is another interesting one, another challenging one, is how to start building a roadmap right at the beginning of the process. James, everyone's nodding. James, I'll come to you first, because you know, as being part of the Clayview team, you must quite often get involved in working out where adding site search comes in the roadmap. Obviously at the top. But what advice do you give people when they're trying to work out how to build and put that roadmap together?
I think if you're starting to build a roadmap, it can be quite confusing, just where you have different stakeholders in the project, and lots of different goals for the project. So really, I mean, it sounds obvious, but really the first step and the point of a roadmap is just to get everything in one place. So once everyone's really kind of vocalized and you've documented all these different stakeholders' interest in the project and what everyone's trying to achieve, you can then start to prioritize, which is the point of the roadmap. So I think it's really key just to have that like central place where everything sits, and then obviously you can prioritize things against each other. Again, it sounds very obvious, but a lot of the time requests, you know, for certain features and stuff will come out of the woodwork later on, and they weren't involved in the roadmap. So it's really making sure you have that central point where everything can be seen, and everything gets put next to each other up front for prioritization. So I'd really say the first step is just to, as messy as it might be, get everything in one place, and then you can work on tidying up that roadmap and prioritization as a second step. Possibly
using the Moscow method as
Absolutely.
well, going right the way back to the beginning of the conversation with Simon. And Georgia, anything you want to add to that roadmap question?
Yeah, certainly. I think absolutely, just talking back to James's points, centralizing everything is critical. We at FIMO, when we're working with clients, the first and most important thing is making sure that we completely understand, and Simon spoke to this, what does success look like for your business? What is your vision, your mission? What are the milestones that are really important for you throughout the next year, throughout the next 5 years? And from there, we look to help recommend, or if you have KPIs already, we make sure that we're well aware of those as well, so we can help to make sure that the roadmap drives us towards success in those areas. And just on the topic of kind of prioritization, we have a few different methods. So Moscow is a really good one. We use some tools where we do simple comparisons between impact versus complexity. And then we have further sort of more detailed ways of doing it, where we look at cost and benefit factors, and we kind of rate those almost in like a decision matrix, giving them each a level of importance, and then you ultimately come out with a score that you can prioritize. I think the difficult thing around it is that often you do have this, like you mentioned earlier, long shopping list of things, and there's so many wonderful ideas coming at you from all areas of the business. So just making sure that all of it is in there, you have it in the backlog or in your planning board, and that you're continuously revisiting those and making sure that you are driving home the right themes that are going to get you to reach those goals ultimately. So yeah, we have some step processes at FIMO that we use, but a big important part of that is really getting stakeholder alignment and making sure that everybody has visibility of what that roadmap looks like at every level.
Yeah. And Simon, did you want to add anything to that, or should we move to our final question?
No, I don't think so. We'll move to final questions. Yeah.
Oh, you sound quite eager, but you don't know what the final question is yet.
No.
No, don't worry. I've saved a fairly straightforward one for the last one. So this is a question for you, Simon. So James, George, you can both relax. What would you have done differently over the last 12 months? if anything, I suppose.
I'm scratching my head a little bit. What would I have done differently over the last 12 months?
Anything you wish you'd done sooner or not done as early, maybe?
I think there are maybe a couple of things that I would have done differently were to fully understand the level of complexity perhaps in a sort of a re-platforming project.
Mm-hmm.
So what I mean by that is, if it hadn't been for my team of very dedicated individuals and very motivated individuals, and of course Vimo, I don't think we'd have delivered as good a re-platforming project in the timescales that we sort of signed up to. We had quite a tight window. And I think we did a sterling job. I think probably one of the things I now appreciate is that, of course, it's ever evolving. So it's that word continuous again. So it's not just the deployment of a brand new site on a brand new platform. It's then, well, we want to get the most out of it. So never overlook potential for additional resource. Never overlook the potential for having to go back to the FD or the board and saying, well, look, guys, the site's performing so well, we actually want to invest some more money now. So, yeah, I think those are probably the things I might not necessarily have done different, but just given a bit more consideration to.
Yeah, so a web rebuild project is they evolve, don't they, as they go on, and then more things get pulled in, and then it becomes a product database update and then this update and everything just to make it perfect. And then, as you say, it is never ending. The days of building a website and then ignoring it for 3 years before building it again, they are far gone. Well, look, thank you very much. That's all the time we got for our questions. So thank you, Georgia and James, for joining us for the Q&A. Much appreciated. Simon, thank you so much for being here and sharing so much of the journey and dealing with several tricky old questions. I know the audience, they've stuck around right till the end, pretty much every single one of them. So I know they've really appreciated it. So thank you all.
Great.
I'm going to put up the thanks slide now. So you guys, I will mute you, so feel free to slurp your tea or bang around, whatever you want to do. You're all now muted. So my final thanks then go to all of you who've come along and asked some great questions, who've stuck around right to the very end to get every last bit of value out of this. I hope you have oh, hold on, I am sharing screen. That's intriguing. Oh well, sorry, my screen's not showing what you're seeing, but there we go. So thank you so much for coming on, asking so many great questions, being a part of this, and I know you will have learned a lot. As I said, you're going to get the replay tomorrow. That will be there for you to watch, to share with your team, to make sure you picked all the great pieces of advice from the session today. And then we've also got to say a huge thanks to both Clavo and Vimo, because they're the ones who've made this event happen. So thank you to you. Calls to action and how to get in contact with each of them you can see on your screen right now. For now though, goodbye.